Hi everyone, I am Michelle Backhouse. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm coming to you today actually from Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, also known as the Annapolis Valley of Nova Scotia. More precisely, just side of the small village of Kingston. The opinions in the video are my own. I am not a spokesperson for the Positive Space Program or for the Canadian Armed Forces. I do not speak of or reflect any policies of the Government of Canada, the Canadian Armed Forces, the RCAF, or the Positive Space Program. I will avoid topics of possible conflicting nature, and I will stay away from political references. I am, despite what my body is telling me, I'm 63. I refuse that, and I substitute my own reality. When my body eventually slows down, I'll get there. But right now, I'm supposed to be 63. I am a reservist in the RCAF. I did 21 years of regular force service. I flew the P-3 or the CP-140 Aurora anti-submarine warfare aircraft. I released back in 2010. I did a short stint, 3.5 years back over in Kandahar Airfield as a civilian defense contractor before getting back into the reserves as a duty watch officer, which then morphed into my current position, which is Cultural Evolution Coordinator for the RCAF at 14 Wing Greenwood. Despite what everyone sees sort of online, on the socials and all the rest of it, I have always considered my story to be a little bit more unique than others, but maybe it's not. And that is the fact that I don't have a definitive start date to any sort of transition. For me, it has been a decades-long evolution. So I don't say that I've changed anything. I don't say I've transitioned. It has been a constant life evolution ever since I was about 9 years old. Something that I knew that I was different, I just didn't quite know what the heck it was. And of course, like many of us in our age group, growing up in the 60s, 70s, we didn't have the vocabulary. We just kind of muddled our way through. We didn't have internet, so there was no connectivity. Growing up in central Alberta after emigrating from England, I was the only one in the whole world that felt this way, right? And what's wrong with me? Only to discover later in life that indeed I was not alone, that there were many other people thinking the same way that I was. I'm kind of jealous sometimes seeing people doing those more rapid transitions. What took me 40 years or 4 decades has taken other people just 4 years to figure out. So sometimes I say I'm a bit of a slow learner. It takes me a while to catch on. But my approach has always just been to take a step, get comfortable and used to something before deciding to move on again. And for me, I guess my last step was just a little over a year ago, 16th of February of 2024 is when I started taking microdosing, my gender-affirming hormone treatment, because I wanted to take that next step and take the masculine, slice off that masculine, become more feminine. But that had taken me 2 years to get to that point, because I'd actually canceled an appointment the year before to do exactly that because I wasn't comfortable. So it was just one of those little steps through my whole evolution that I have decided that, it's now time to take that next step. And I don't look back on my life with regret. I can look back sometimes and feel disappointed that I didn't do things earlier, But I'm not going to regret that, because that's all water under the bridge. You can't do anything about it. What we can do, and what I've done, is I've learned from that past experience, and I'm applying it to my life today to carry it through into the future. So for my story, for my evolution, as I say, it started off at 9 years old. This was back in England before we emigrated to Canada. Myself and my sister had typical gendered dress-up costumes. I had a Bobby's costume. She had a nurse's costume. I wanted to wear that nurse's costume for whatever reason so desperately, but it was too small. But what I did is I took the black cape from the costume and wrapped it around my waist as a skirt, got a pair of my mother's nylons, put on the Bobby's jacket and hat, and went out into the house to direct traffic as a policewoman. That memory is burned into my brain like it was yesterday. My parents, my parents saw me, had a little bit of a chuckle through the front window. They were outside. I felt embarrassed, threw everything underneath the bed. Very disappointed to find that the pantyhose were gone the next morning. But that was one of the definitive bursts in my life that I knew I was different. From then on, there has always been this voice in the back of my brain every single day saying, hey, I would like out. Can I come out and play? Can I come out and express myself? And all through my life, it's something that has had to be quashed, right? Suppressed, ignored, except for sometimes when I've had that opportunity to let that part of me out. Now, I don't say that I was ever in the closet, because I don't particularly like that term. The way I like to describe my life is that I've lived part of my life in the shadows. And for certain opportunities, I've let this part of my life step out of the shadows for an hour or two or a day, but then step back into the shadows. It's always there, just not seen. Getting back to sort of the idea of when did I initiate my transition, or when did I start? I don't have a start date as such. I have many firsts. That first, obviously, when I was 9 years old. That was one of the very firsts. During my time as a civilian, between my regular force service and my reserve time, I was able to spend a lot more time on the internet and dig a little deeper, because I knew there must be other people like me out there. Lo and behold, there were, except they were in England or in the States. So you dig a little more. And then you find that, oh, hey, here's a Canadian, here's a Nova Scotian. And then, just a minute, I know this person, they work on the base. I've worked with this person before. Then you realize how small a world it really is, and that we, in our experiences, are not alone. So that was another one of those firsts, realizing that there were people local to me, and eventually meeting them. It was right after I got back into the reserves that I met with a young trans woman on the base who had just started her transition. And back in 2016, there was no support network within the military to support members. So she was very frustrated. She had nobody to talk to. Things were taking too long. People didn't understand. And that's when I learned about the Positive Space program. And it had just started up within the CAF, Canadian Armed Forces. And so I scrounged up the funds from my deputy commanding officer. She sent me off to Ottawa to take the training, 2 days. It was at the end of day one, after having listened to another member's story about her transition, that I realized I could be my true authentic self and express this part of me in the workplace. Day two, I showed up as Michelle, And it was the first time, again, and one of those firsts where I had spent the whole day in front of a group of strangers, basically. And it was like a massive weight being lifted off my shoulders, off my chest. It was like, oh my God, I can breathe. I can be myself. And it gave me so much confidence after that day one that I actually flew home from Ottawa back to Halifax. I flew home with Air Canada as Michelle and encountered no problems whatsoever. So that was another one of those firsts when I realized that I could be this part of me. This part of me could be out in society. There were times, though, in my military career where I felt bad. Some of those times were going through pilot training. I felt awkward because there would be goings on in the back bar at the mess or at a house party, and I didn't feel comfortable because I didn't like what was going on with the guys and the women. But not wanting to be one to rock the boat or to be singled out or possibly to be outed, I didn't say anything. I just went along with it and to kind of laugh with it and find an excuse to leave early. Because, again, I didn't know exactly why I felt that way at that time. I realize now why. But it was an extremely awkward position to be in. It was through further education for myself, lived experiences, that I became far more understanding of what was going on. Funny thing though, also during my time in Moose Jaw doing pilot training, we would go into Regina on a Friday or a Saturday, maybe go grab a quick bite, maybe go to the mall before going to the clubs. And it was actually during one of my early on positive space training sessions that I was facilitating that I realized that I don't know how a regular or cisgendered guy thinks. Because when we went out to the clubs, I'm now assuming what a cisgendered male thinks when he's looking at a girl on the dance floor. Nice hair, nice dress, very pretty. Maybe they're thinking, hey, I would like to be with her tonight. I'm looking at her going, wonder what that dress would look like on me, right? Or, you know what? I would love to be her tonight, but not necessarily tomorrow morning. But I don't know, maybe that's what the guy's thinking as well. I'd love to be with her tonight, but not tomorrow morning. I don't know. I don't know how they think, right? Because my way of thinking is completely different from a cisgendered male's. And it was only during that training that came to my mind and said, wow, I don't know how guys think because I'm not a typical guy or a cisgendered male. My brain is wired differently. My thoughts are different. As I got serious with my wife, this is sort of one of the darker periods of my life. Or not so much dark, but I told her I was a cross-dresser because that was the truth that I knew at the time. If I had known then what I know now, so 31 years ago, I would have told her the full truth because I could not hide that from her. Unfortunately, I didn't know my own truth at that time. So I just told her I was a heterosexual crossdresser. I've gone through the whole gamut of identities, thinking that cisgendered, heterosexual, crossdresser. But it was always more than the clothes, always had been. And I think back through my life again, growing up in central Alberta on a hobby farm. When nobody else was around, I would put on my sister's barn clothes to go out and do chores. Nothing glamorous about that type of clothing. But in my mind, the pigs were seeing a girl doing her chores. And that made me feel good about myself. And I think back to that, and when I'm doing it, I'm going, I didn't know why I did it. It just felt right. And now I can connect that and go, oh, well, yeah, there's the reason why. So it's never been just about the clothes. With kids coming along, I had to suppress this part of me. So that's one of the only times that I say I use the closet, because I had to put everything in boxes and I had to shove them all at the back of the closet. That little voice and that girl in the back of my brain, she had to be locked up deep and tight and stifled and muffled. I could not listen to her at all. Not for a number of years, until the kids got a little older, off to school. Then, hey, I've got the house to myself for a morning or whatever. Then I could let her out again. But it was always very disappointing to have to put her back. Okay, your time's up. Sorry. Off you go. For me, though, as I said, I've run the gamut of identities. I came across the term gender fluid. But then I actually met somebody who was gender fluid and started to understand from them how that was. And I went, okay, no, that doesn't describe me. And that was actually at the Positive Space Training in Ottawa. Then in 2020, I think it was January-ish, very beginning of 2020, I discovered the term bigender. And I thought, you know what, that's a better descriptor for me because I'm both masculine and feminine. In 2021, I did a 4-day course in Halifax, and I challenged myself to see if I could do it as Michelle for the whole 4 days. At the end of the 4 days, it was very obvious that it didn't interfere with my learning. It didn't interfere with the class. I could be myself. A dear friend of mine who was the 7th, I believe she was the 7th Armed Forces member to actually undergo sex reassignment, we'll use the term of the day. So that was 20 some years ago. She now is retired, just down the road from where I am. But she actually asked me the hardest question that's ever been asked me. And it was simple. She said, which side is stronger? I couldn't answer that question for another 3.5 years. So I told her, I'll get back to you on that. It was something that I had to work on, because despite the fact that I thoroughly enjoyed being out, expressing this part of myself, it was so liberating, I was still wrestling with the fact that I was still a guy, and I was still going to work as a guy. It's now been 3.5, almost 4 years since the last time that I expressed my male self at work. So that's another unique part of my story, is you've got those people who live that dual life, at home life and at work life. Mine's the other way around, because I was expressing my feminine self at work and I was expressing my masculine at home, because I had 100% acceptance at work. Whereas at home, it was still a little bit of iffy ground to be worked on. So I used to go to work in male mode, get dressed at work, put on makeup, redo my hair. COVID was really good for that, because that's when I started growing my hair out. Thank you, COVID. That's one of the only positives of COVID. But now, as I've gotten more comfortable and fully realizing who I am and my full potential, I now get ready at home, I do my hair, I put my makeup on, I get dressed as Michelle at work, at home, go to work. At the end of the day, come home, I'll even do shopping on the way home. My wife knows that now, but it doesn't matter. It's just me doing whatever shopping needs to be done at the grocery store. I come home, drop off the groceries at the bottom of the stairs, I will come back up, I will take off my makeup, change out of my uniform, put on my sweats and my sweatshirt, and I revert back to my male self, because I'm back in the home environment. I'm starting to find that a little more difficult to do. So when my friend asked me that question back in 2021, as I said, it took me 3.5 years to answer it. And definitely, yes, the feminine side is stronger than the masculine side. And I only say that now after realizing that I have lived my whole life as a guy, living up to the expectations of what life is supposed to be like for a guy. Get a girlfriend, get married, have kids, get a good job, bring home, it's like typical. I played that role very well. I think you should get an Oscar for it. I think a lot of us could probably do with an Oscar for the roles that we played. But again, I say, I don't regret any part of my life, my past life. I want to take what I have learned from my past. I don't have a dead name. Right? I don't regret, and I don't have that negativity towards my male self. It is who I am still, partially. But I take what I can from that part of my life, apply it to today's life, and look at how I can apply it to better my future and the future of others. One thing that has come out the more I've been able to express myself, mostly at work again, is that I've started to do things that I never ever expected to do. I've always wanted to do, since little, I always wanted to do things where I was seen as, treated as, just to be a girl or a woman doing regular daily things. And now I get to do that. One of those things that I'd always wanted to do was play sports. So 2 years ago, I actually had in my class for Positive Space a couple of soccer players, a couple of female soccer players, and they said, "Do you play soccer? We need soccer players." I thought, okay, whatever, I'll give it a try. I used to coach little kids, but I'd never actually played on a team. So I went out to help them just in soccer practice. And they looked at me and said, "We don't need help, we need players." And that was my introduction. Basically, I was one of the girls on the soccer team. And at the end of that first year, they said, "What are you doing this winter?" I said, "I don't know." And they went, "We need hockey players." So 9 days shy of my 62nd birthday, I donned the hockey equipment and I stepped on the ice for the very first time. 9 days before my 62nd birthday, November 1st of 2023. And I fell in love with the game. It's like a drug. I can't get enough ice time. I just love it. But there's me, 62, now 63, out there playing hockey and just having a blast. And one of the things that I have learned is that the acceptance out there for people like ourselves, like myself and others, there is far more acceptance out there than there is negativity. I have been accepted by my teammates on both the women's soccer and the women's hockey teams, as well as competitors. And they have fully accepted me as just another woman. On this, at the soccer games, I've got the bruises up and down my elbow and in my sides and everything because of the younger women, the younger girls who are usually half to 2/3 my age. So I'm out there at 60 something and they're running around at 20. I can't keep up with them. But when you get into the corners fighting for that ball, that's all that counts. That's just the ball. It's a game. They don't care. And the same thing with hockey. It's like you're fighting for the puck. That's what it's all about, and having fun. And I've talked to many of the women off opposing teams, and it's full acceptance. And that's one of the hardest things I think for us, or at least for myself, was to accept that. The fact that the acceptance is there and that we are just one of them. I use the women's dressing room for hockey. And one of the most affirming moments just occurred a month or so ago, where it was during our winter carnival event. So all the units had separate hockey teams. And there were a couple of women on the deputy wing command team, one of them being the wing commander's wife. And we had just finished the game. We're getting changed. Everyone's just down to their underwear. Everyone else was dressed except me. I had just taken off my sweaty shirt and I was just wearing my bra. the wing commander cracked the door open and yelled and asked in, is it okay to come in to talk to my wife? Two of the other girls instantly looked around the dressing room and said, no, just a minute. I was the only one in my bra. Everybody else was dressed because I was one of them, and they were treating me as one of them and respecting my dignity. And that is so affirming when something like that happens. And it's at those moments when I realize that my visibility and my ability to reach out and talk to other people and educate other people, that somebody else is going to one day have that experience of affirmation. And that's what drives me to do what I do through my work. And I have had many people phone me, email me from across the country because they have found my name and or have been referred to me to talk to. And when somebody comes into my office or gives me a call and we have a deep down heart to heart, and they leave, and I had one just a couple of weeks ago, and they stood up and they sort of looked at me and I looked at them, and it was like, yeah, come on here, give you a big hug, and stuff. And this is military, but it's behind closed doors. It's a major and a corporal hugging each other, right? Which is not typical military protocol. But when you enter my office, ranks are off. There is no rank. We're just people. And this is what makes me get up in the morning and go to work, is for these interactions. Because I have heard too many negative stories from the older generation. There are still some of the younger generation who are struggling day to day to fully understand who they are and how to live their life. How do I start transitioning in the military? Where do I start? I have had too many of those questions. I've heard them all, and so I would rather answer those questions for them, and I want to be there for them. I'm not going to hold their hand because it's their life to live, but at least I can point them in the right direction. And I can sit back and I can see them start to evolve with themselves as well. And it brings a smile to my face. I'm happy for them, right? And that's what it boils down to. It's like, you know what? Let's just be nice to everybody. Let's help everybody else out. And that's my philosophy. And it's one of those things that I've thought about, as I said, for decades. It's taken me a while, so I can understand that it's going to take somebody else a while maybe to get to where I'm at, to feel comfortable fully expressing themselves. I was the type of individual that wanted to just get through life, middle of the pack. I didn't want to stand out. I didn't want to be bottom. Just let's get through life in the middle. Yeah, no, that's not on anymore. So for me now, it's like I could stand in front of an auditorium, a theater with 300 strangers, and I could tell them exactly this, my life story. When I do that though, I try to look at every single person in the audience because I want to make a personal connection with them. So when they leave, they can't say that they didn't know or that they've never known or never connected with somebody who's transgender. That is what I do. And I enjoy doing that now. Because gone is that individual who just wanted to breeze through life, middle of the class, don't let anybody see you. Now, here I am. I've got flags outside my office. I got flags on my office wall. I got my mug that says trans lives, trans rights or human rights. I got no subtle messaging. You know me. My lanyard at work is the trans colors, because there's no rules against what color lanyard you can wear for your pass to be hanging on. So it's right there for everybody to see. If anybody wants to ask any questions at any time, go ahead. I can stand by the water cooler and you can ask me what you think may be the worst question ever. I will take it and I will answer it. Because that's now the person I am. So acknowledging, which is one of the hardest things that we do as individuals sometimes, right? We try to hide it. It's like acknowledging who you are, accepting who you are, and embracing who you are has made me a far better person. And that's the way I want to live the rest of my life. I want to help. I want people to see that we're just regular people. We just want to live our lives happily and have fun and do our job or whatever. And we're not scary people.